Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Hello and welcome to Program Insight in V News English. Dear viewers, today's conversation will be on United States-Israel war against Iran. It is seventh day of war now against Iran. So in today's program, we would like to discuss, examine and investigate, whether war objectives of Israel have been achieved or not. And furthermore, what is the situation inside in Israel and all related issues? To discuss this all, we are fortunate to have with us very, very senior Middle Eastern affairs expert, international affairs expert, journalist and analyst, Mr. Ahmed Quraishi. Mr. Ahmed Quraishi, very warm welcome in Program Insight in V News English. So it is the seventh day of the war. So would you like to share what are the war objectives of Israel while engaging war against Iran?
So these have been very, very, I would say, historic, I think. You'd agree with me, Mateen, I'm sure, because this is a situation that we have never seen before. Iran is not new to trouble. Iran has always been in trouble since 1979. But this is the first time that the war actually comes inside Iran. And this is a new thing. So for all these 47 years, we've seen Iran embroiled in trouble, but it has never been inside Iran. It has always been the oil tankers in the Strait of Hormuz, the Gulf waters. It has been, with Saudi Arabia, with Kuwait, with Iraq, with Syria, Lebanon, but never inside Iran. So this is something new, number one. Number two, I mean, this is the question, the million-dollar question, Mateen Saab, that everyone is asking. What has actually the Israelis have achieved? Of course, they have an operation called Roaring Lion, and the U.S. has a different operation called the Epic Fury. And from the statements of both officials, of course, they seem to be slightly different. The Americans are saying the objective is to destroy the missile program, the ballistic missile program, and the nuclear program. The Israeli objective, I think the Israelis are being very blunt, and you can see it from the statements of the Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, when he says he wants regime change. He's talking very openly about it. Although President Trump is also talking about this, but if you see the statements of the War Secretary, Hegseth, the commanders, even Trump sometimes, he says, he's more focused on it's not regime change. But I think the only reason the U.S. administration and President Trump are saying this is because
assassinating Mr. Khamenei was another objective?
Yeah, I don't think it was ever announced. But if you recall, back in June, Mateen, if you recall, President Trump made a threatening one-line statement in the war where he said, we know where he is, but we chose not to strike him.
Exactly.
So yes, it could have been a bluff. It could have been a bluff just to scare the Iranian government. But it turns out now that they actually did know his whereabouts, or they had compromised the security around him and eventually reached him. And it's quite obvious, Mateen, anybody who studies military strategy knows this. If you go for the leadership from the very start of the military operation, you have a better chance of crippling the system. Iran has not crippled. Let's be very, very straightforward. Iran has not crippled at all. In fact, one of the impressive things, if I were an Iranian official right now on TV and somebody asked me, tell me one good thing about this war that Iran has done, I would say it is that the Iranian regime, the government, whatever you want to call it, are standing intact. You don't see a collapse, number one. You don't see desertions. You don't see people from the police, from the military, from the paramilitaries, anybody who's defecting. You're not even seeing so far any diplomats of Iran from the Iranian Foreign Ministry deserting at stations outside. By the way, if you recall, when Saddam Hussein was finally taken down in 2003, all of these things that we just discussed preceded the fall of the regime. There were defections, there were desertions, at the military level, defections at the diplomatic level, and you saw signs of collapse. You do not see that happening right now. I was expecting, for example, that after eliminating the supreme leader and taking down, some of the initial air defense systems the Iranians have, I thought maybe some people, some commanders within the IRGC, for example, would begin to defect or desert. And you would see, for example, some stations, air defense stations in different parts of Iran, suddenly stopping to fire, air defense missiles and whatnot. That hasn't happened yet. So this is also a very interesting development, and you see some of that being covered, obviously, by the Israeli and the American media. But according to President Trump, just moments ago, just before we recorded this, he said basically the day by day, as the war prolongs, the attackers become stronger, and the defenders, the Iranians, the Iranian military, the IRGC, become weaker. We're not seeing those signs of getting weaker, by the way, not yet. But let's see.
How long Israel can sustain this war in terms of comparison? Israel is a small territory and Iran is a huge territory. And of course, every day when Israel is using ammunition, its defense, particularly its defense stocks, are depleting gradually.
Yes. So, this is the million-dollar question. So let's begin with the Israelis. The Israelis can sustain one thing for a long time and the other thing for a very short time. The thing that they can sustain for a long time is to fight for a long time. They can sustain warfare for a long time on multiple fronts. I'm saying this because of only one reason, is that we have seen them do that over the past 2.5 years. So we know that they have the ability to sustain military operations over the long run on multiple fronts. They're doing it right now. In fact, last night, one of the strangest things happened in these 7 days when at the same time we had Israeli jets striking over Beirut. We had Hezbollah drones and missiles reaching Tel Aviv. At the same time, we had Iranian IRGC missiles and drones reaching Israel. And at the same time, we had Israeli jets over Tehran. And all these four things were happening exactly at the same time. So you can see that both Israel and Iran, also Iran, I have to emphasize this, Iran also has the ability to fight on multiple fronts for a long time. And we have seen them do that over the past 2 years. They have the Lebanese front, they have the Iraqi front, they have the Yemeni front, and obviously they have Iran itself. And mind you, Mateen, the Iranians so far have only deployed their main front, which is Iran, and in a very small scale, the Lebanese front. We haven't seen the Lebanese front erupt from the Hezbollah side in a complete way. So, and of course, I'm going by the statements of Hezbollah officials who say we have more missiles or rockets that are more advanced. Let's see. I have my doubts that they have. Iranians do have. I doubt the Hezbollah have more advanced, but let's see. They're saying so. But the Iranians have the capability. Now, back to the Israelis. They can sustain military operations for a long term. What they can't sustain, they cannot sustain for a long term, as you said, is, of course, it's a small country that they do not have a strategic depth. They can't go for a long time with destruction over their, the population centers, the towns, and the major cities. So that is a problem. The Israelis have one advantage, one very good advantage, which is they have the ability and the infrastructure to go underground. So, and they've been trained to do that for a long time. So I would say the Israelis might sustain a long war with damages. And by the way, let me also tell you, back in June 2025, 6 months before, 6, 7, 8 months now, the Israelis actually did calculate a large civilian death casualty inside Israel as a price for crippling Iran. So, but that didn't happen back in June. It hasn't happened yet. But also keep in mind that Iran has not unleashed yet its full fury. So Iran has the ability to attack more civilian population centers than Israel. It has not done that. It has done it selectively. And yesterday, I think one of the Iranian military spokespeople said, if it comes to toppling the government in Tehran, then we will attack the Israeli nuclear reactor at Dimona. So Iran has more power and more fury. They have not unleashed it yet. There's no doubt about this.
One of the most important things in Middle East that Israel prepared was Abraham Accord. What do you think that once the war ends, will it be possible for Israel to get the Abraham Accord implemented and get its relations with the Arab world normalized? Is it possible?
Well, some of the Iranian opposition, Mateen, are talking about now about the Cyrus Accords. Cyrus, of course, Cyrus the great Persian Iranian king from history, who had a very good relationship with Israel at that time, the old biblical Israel, and so Cyrus Accords and Abraham Accords. But before that, Mateen, let's be very clear about one thing. All of Iran's neighbors want a ceasefire, all of them. But the United States and Israel do not want a ceasefire. And they know that all of the neighbors want a ceasefire. The Gulf GCC Arab states, Turkey, Azerbaijan, Pakistan, everybody wants a ceasefire, all the neighbors of Iran. But the Israelis and Americans don't want that. And they still went ahead with the war. And they're telling something to everyone. They're telling Pakistan, they're telling Azerbaijan, they're telling Turkey and the Gulf Arab states one thing, one very key point. I haven't heard this said openly by any Israeli or American officials, but we have indications from the Arab media that this is being discussed in the back rooms. And what is that line? That line is, bear some price for more good down the road. So let's be ready. The Gulf Arab states and the other neighbors of Iran, let us be ready to pay a small price. I don't know how small it is because it's beginning to look big because major cities are being targeted in the Gulf. And now, of course, we see attacks in Azerbaijan, in Turkey. The only, I think, major neighbor or two neighbors of Iran that have not been impacted yet, luckily, are probably Iraq and Pakistan, and everybody else is. But what we're hearing is the Israeli officials, the American officials telling all of these neighbors of Iran, bear with us. This is good. I mean, let's pay a small price now, and we will save ourselves from multiple wars in the future. So that's an argument. We can debate it, some other time. So that's one thing. And now you talked about the Abraham Accords. I assume you're basically what you're asking is, after this war, is there a chance of Abraham Accords moving forward?
Exactly.
So I can see that happening, Mateen, only in one condition, obviously. And the condition is that we see a regime change in Tehran, which is the main objective, obviously, of both the Israeli and the American operations. As we discussed, we don't see that happening right now. We see a conflict. We see Iran holding on. We see the regime holding on. We don't see any signs of the regime crippling. Yes, there's talk about the possibility of the Kurds coming in to fight. Let's see if that is even possible. We haven't seen the Iranian people rise up, which was the expectation. I think they did in early January, on 8 and 9 January, but not after that. There were protests and demonstrations across Iran, but not after that, and they've died down. And the state and the Iranian government were successful in controlling it. So a lot of ifs and buts, lots of ifs and buts. But if there is a weakening of the regime, and there is a movement inside Iran, and some sort of change of government in Tehran, some sort, because we also heard that the Turkish government, and I think it was the foreign minister of Turkey, Mr. Fidan Hakan, who actually said that it'll be a good idea if we begin to, and the Iranian government begins to talk about an internal change brought not from the outside, but from within. So the regime stays in power, but it changes the government. It brings more moderate people who can talk to the US, who can talk to everybody and normalize the relationship with the neighborhood. Can it happen? I don't know. I know one thing. I know, I always say this, Mateen, and maybe we can conclude on this. I always say this. The Islamists, the Islamic movements across the Middle East have never ruled a country. Yes, there have been some troubling experiments with Taliban in Afghanistan, with Hamas in Gaza. Yes, and partially Hezbollah came to power or was elected to the parliament in Lebanon, but overall, and in Egypt you had the Muslim Brotherhood, obviously, and it went bad. You saw that there was a coup, and they couldn't sustain it. It was a failure for them.
Mursi's government was backed. Mursi's government was backed.
Exactly. The only Islamist, and I say the only Islamist in the Middle East who succeeded to remain in power in 47 years and continue to be in power are the Iranian Islamists. And they continue to be in power. Why? Because I always say this, they are the smartest Islamists in the Muslim world. They're the smartest. They know when to be diplomatic. They know when to be harsh. They know when to fight, and they know when and how much concessions to give. You know how much they fought the United States, but when time came, they cooperated with the U.S. in toppling the Taliban regime in Afghanistan. They cooperated with the U.S. and the West and with Arab countries in toppling the Saddam Hussein regime in Iraq. So they know when to be doves and when to be hawks. So I'm assuming, I'm a bit surprised that the war is moving into its 7th or 8th day, but I know that the Islamists of Iran who are in power, and I call them the Khomeinists, because they are a political group who believe in the ideology of Imam Ruhollah Khomeini. So they are Khomeinists. They're very ideological. They have a certain ideology. The supreme leader, the Walayat al-Faqih, and they're smart people. So let's see how they move forward. I expect, so far they're saying we will not talk to the US, but let's see.
How you see the economic dimension of this war, where the entire Middle Eastern economy and oil and gas and tourism and everything is severely disrupted and destroyed?
This situation, Mateen, is good for the US. It's good for Russia. It's bad for China and almost everyone else. So it's good for the US, it's good for Russia, bad for China, and bad for everyone else. So it's good for the US and Russia. Why? Because they're when the oil producers in this region go out of business temporarily for 10 days, 2 weeks, a month, whatever, the Americans and the Russians can fill the gap. They can supply. The Russians, in fact, were the first to... I just saw today, I think earlier, a statement from a senior Russian official who said, we have everything in place and we can supply everybody. So the Russians are very happy, I'm sure, privately, they will not say it, but they can fill in and they can supply to China, they can supply to India, they can supply to everybody, to Pakistan, to Turkey, to everyone. So that's number one. The Americans are the number one oil producer in the world right now. They're the number one LNG producer. They're the number one gas producer. So, and they have no problem, and they would like to sell. And President Trump is all for it. So, He's not saying it, obviously, so that obviously if he will say it, he'll be accused of trying to take over the clients of Saudi Arabia and the Gulf countries and Iran and everybody else. He will not say it, obviously, but the U.S. benefits, Russia benefits. China is obviously a net loser because, again, China will have to now become very, very dependent on the Americans and the Russians to buy from them. So is India. India will have to be, again, India hates to be in this position, but it will have to go to the U.S. and to Russia and to buy from them. I think they cannot buy from Russia because of their latest agreement with President Trump, the trade agreement. They cannot buy Russian oil, so they'll have to buy American oil. So America benefits. So who's losing? You said it. The oil-producing countries of the Gulf, both the Arabs and the Iranians, and obviously the tourism. So that will be hurt. There's no question about it.
Thank you so much indeed, Mr. Ahmed Quraishi, for extremely insightful conversation on what exactly is happening in Middle East in the context of ongoing Iranian war. What will be the consequences? How long the war will continue, and whether Iran has capability to sustain this war, and what about Israel and United States of America? Thank you so much once again. We knew that because of your expertise, you were quite busy. However, you spared time and participated in our show. Dear viewers, till our next
Great honor to be with you, Mateen. It's a great honor.
And Khuda Hafiz.
Allah Hafiz.